Now, the general weather around Alaska.
Welcome, everyone, to Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, coming to you from the National Weather Service in Alaska region on this Sunday, September 7th, 2025. And in the weather-related headlines across the state, we still have a wind advisory in effect for the area of the Alaska Range, Isabel Pass north of Trim's Camp until midnight this Sunday evening. Winds could still gust upwards of 50 to near 60 miles an hour as a frontal system will be pushing through that area this evening. A flood watch continues for the Kobuk River around Shugnock, Ambler areas into Monday morning due to the fact some additional light rainfall is expected through Monday morning that will potentially aggravate the cause of water levels along the Kobuk River there to go up a bit. There was the big rain events that have happened over the past week and a half, so already high water event, just keeping an eye on that. And then storm force winds and some rain will move through the central Aleutians on Monday as a low pressure center with a central pressure down around 975 millibars will be pulling through there. And then midweek, moisture riding northward and encountering colder air will turn into accumulating snow. Several inches of wet snow could fall along the north slope and spine of the Brooks Range later Wednesday through Thursday into Friday morning. So anyone out that way recreating and hunting, be aware of that fact. Right now, Atkasuk, mostly cloudy, 46 degrees up there in the northwest. As we drop down into the Aleutians, Dutch Harbor, mostly cloudy, 53. You're going to see some wind and rain moving in there tomorrow on Monday. Strongest winds will be to the west there across the central Aleutians. And then Yakutat, partly cloudy right now, 61 degrees, but that same system moving through the Aleutians is going to then ride up into the Gulf, and the frontal system associated with that low will bring some moderate to heavy rain along the northeastern Gulf Coast at Yakutat as well as into the Panhandle as we go through starting early Wednesday morning, continuing into Friday morning. And down in the southern part of the Panhandle, Craig, high cirrus clouds, 70 degrees. We still have a number of spots up above the water, especially on Prince of Wales Island with temperatures in the 70s this Sunday afternoon. But that ridge of high pressure that has brought the sunshine and really warm temperatures, especially the southern Panhandle, is finally now breaking down and eventually allow for that low to come into the Gulf and then push things out. But we'll start with first things first. We have the wind advisory in effect till midnight this Sunday night for the area through Isabel Pass north of Trim's Camp. And again, winds could gust as high as 50 to near 60 miles an hour. Flood watch along the Kobuk River will continue into Monday morning. Some additional light rain expected, but we're not expecting major issues, not like the heavy rainfall and the high water flooding events that happened over the past week. And then two things to look at here. We have in the far north, along the spine of the Brooks Range north slope, there's going to be moisture ride northward here this midweek, and when it gets over the mountains and encounters the colder air, there could be several inches of wet snowfall here between Wednesday afternoon and Friday morning. So anyone out through this area recreating, especially hunters this time of year, be prepared for inclement weather and either postpone plans, but make sure you have the proper gear to handle that early season snowfall. And then down here across the Panhandle, as the low that'll be crossing just south of the Aleutian chain tomorrow, that's going to swing up into the western Gulf, and that's going to force a wet and windy front all along the Gulf Coast into the Panhandle. In some areas here, northeastern Gulf Coast Panhandle, 2 to 4 inches of rain falling from early Wednesday morning into early Friday morning. And the heaviest rain, upwards of 6 inches due to the orographic lift, especially in the coastal mountains of the northeastern Gulf Coast there. So be aware of that. Going to turn wet instead of all that nice, sunny, warm, dry weather you've had for some time. And looking at the satellite imagery, we have one front here pushing eastward across the Alaska Range down into the Gulf, North Pacific area of low pressure that's come in to the western interior. And then here we clearly see, here's the next low, the center of it down over here. It'll be passing just south of the Aleutian chain tonight and on Monday. So later tonight and early on Monday morning, we have a low down near 977 millibars with some high-end gale to low-end storm force winds wrapping around that, along with some moderate rainfall. And then Here we have a weakening, what's left of a front, and kind of a weak secondary low here in the western Gulf, kind of between Kodiak Island and the tip of the Kenai Peninsula. And that'll have a few areas of light rain showers with it. And then here's the low that's come inland. There's cooler air to the north and west. Warm air out here still over Canada. We have still a ridge of high pressure over western Canada, but it's pushing eastward and beginning to break down. On Monday, still warm air over here. The Panhandle, southern Panhandle, still generally dry, still a mild day. I can't rule out somebody still hitting near 70, but not as warm as what it was this past week and the week and a half or so that has been the case. We have the cooler air up here in the northwest portion of the mainland, not terribly cold though. And then here's the low crossing the central eastern Aleutians, passing just south of there. And that will eventually head east-northeastward. So by Tuesday, the low will be passing just south and southeast of the Alaska Peninsula. And along this frontal boundary will be some strong gusty winds and areas of generally moderate rainfall. The cooler air that's sitting up here will begin to take a southward dive along the west coast as we get into midweek, so that by Wednesday, the low is located in the south end of Kodiak Island, pushing up into the western Gulf. This is going to force this frontal system up along the Gulf Coast into the Panhandle. And again, areas along this front, especially northeastern Gulf Coast and into the Panhandle, could see some moderate to locally heavier rainfall with that front. I'm sure there will be at least gale force winds along some of that. And then we're also going to start to see some of the cooler air being drawn down on the west side of the state as that moisture rides north. It's going to encounter a bit colder air over the north slope. And so by the time we get in, especially Wednesday late afternoon, evening through early Friday morning, there is going to be several inches of wet snow along areas of the north slope and along the spine of the Brooks Range. Looking at temperatures Monday morning, generally most areas in the far north still staying above freezing, 34 or so, Wainwright and at Utqiagvik. And then you get south of the Brooks Range, temperatures mid-upper 40s for lows, all up along the Yukon River and the Kuskokwim, as well as coming up through the Tanana Valley. And then elsewhere, Anchorage Bowl, lows upper 40s, near 50 degrees. And we find upper 40s around Juneau, Skagway, but lower 50s from Sitka down through the southern part of the Panhandle and out to the west here. We have lows near 50, Dutch Harbor, Unalaska. Temperatures Monday afternoon could still be near 60 up through the Tanana Valley along the Alcan border. We still could see mid-upper 60s to maybe an isolated 70-degree reading on Monday afternoon. Still there, something around Klawock or Craig. Depends on how thick the clouds are. And then back to the west, we see readings generally in the 50s through the Yukon, Kuskokwim valleys, about 55 at Bethel, 52 at Nome. A little cooler here. You can see that hint of the cooler air along the western north slope. And then highs generally in the low mid-50s out through the Aleutians. Tuesday morning, just a little colder. You can see a few readings below freezing along spine of the Brooks Range, near freezing there at Utqiagvik. So that colder air is taking shape up there. We find some lows in the 30s along the Alcan border, especially if you have some breaks in the clouds. That could extend to parts of the Copper River Basin, lows across the Panhandle. Generally upper 40s to lower 50s, and then lows generally around or just above 50 along the Alaska Peninsula out toward the eastern Aleutians. And Tuesday afternoon, we're still going to find some 60-degree readings, Yukon Flats, Fairbanks, on up along the Alcan border at Eagle and Northway. Still some 60s, especially southern Panhandle, but not as warm. Probably unlikely to have any 70-degree readings with some increasing clouds, and then readings generally in the 50s, not only across the southwest interior and along the Kuskokwim and Yukon rivers, but also extending out along the Alaska Peninsula into the eastern Aleutians. So here is the 6 to 10-day temperature outlook. September 13th through the 17th, centered on mid-September. And it's still looking like the best area location to have above normal temperatures continue will be the southeast mainland, especially Copper River Basin, Wrangell, St. Elias area, on through the entire Panhandle, implying moisture coming up into these regions, moist, mild flow. But on the backside, northeast to north winds, so cooler and drier weather settling in along the west side of the mainland, especially here through the southwest interior, centered on the Kuskokwim River around Bethel. And as far as precipitation, it looks like it's still average, a bit above normal, especially through the Panhandle, slightly so up along the Alcan border. Near normal precipitation, Cook Inlet, Anchorage northward through Fairbanks, Yadvik, but on the west side of the state, expect precipitation to average a bit below normal, a little drier period there, September 13th through the 17th.